minutes of footage proving an 8-foot-tall intelligent species has been living in these mountains, slowly going extinct, while the government watches and federal agents arrested me 11 days after I exposed it. The Department of Interior thought they'd confiscated all the evidence. They were wrong. October 14th, 7:42 in the morning, Bell 206 lifting off from Cascade Station, northern sweep over Clearwater Basin, checking hiking trails before the early snow moved in. Golden aspens against dark evergreens painting the mountainside. I'd been flying search and rescue for 3 decades. Former military pilot, 8,000 flight hours logged. I knew every ridge, every valley in these mountains. I was flying at 1,500 feet, following the ridgeline east toward Clearwater Basin, the most remote section of my patrol zone. The terrain was too steep, too isolated, too far from marked trails. At 8:17, something caught my peripheral vision. Movement in the upper meadow, maybe 400 feet below. I adjusted course and began a wide circle. Through the scope, I counted 4 figures in an open area near the tree line. I checked the GPS. No registered permits for this zone. I descended to 400 feet. Camera system locked on target. The dual lens setup was recording to solid-state drives. As I zoomed in, something felt wrong. The way these figures moved, too fluid, too coordinated, not the stumbling gait of tired hikers. Through the camera feed on my cockpit screen, details emerged that didn't make sense. 2 larger figures, 2 smaller ones. Family configuration, but the proportions were off. Shoulders too broad, arms extending past where human limbs should end. One of the smaller figures was crouched near berry bushes. The 2 larger ones stood like sentries, heads constantly moving, scanning with an alertness level I'd only seen in animals aware of predators. I zoomed the camera tighter, looking for costume seams, gear straps, anything human. Nothing. The proportions were wrong in ways fabric couldn't fake. Then the larger male suddenly froze. His head snapped toward the south tree line. The others responded instantly, forming a protective triangle around the smaller figures. Coordinated defense behavior, military precise. That's when I saw the trigger. A massive dark shape emerging from the pines. Grizzly bear, at least 600 pounds, moving with purpose directly toward the group. I grabbed the radio. Base to Rescue 7, I've got a grizzly attack developing in Clearwater Basin. 4 individuals, possibly in danger. Rescue 7, maintain distance. Do not approach wildlife encounters. I didn't respond. What happened in the next 30 seconds would shatter everything I thought I understood about these mountains. The grizzly broke into a full charge, 650 pounds, moving at 35 miles per hour. Through the camera scope, I watched as the larger male figure stepped forward toward the charging bear, and I saw him clearly. 8 feet tall, maybe taller, shoulders broader than any human frame could support, covered in dark reddish-brown hair that caught the morning sunlight, arms extending well past human proportions, and the face almost human but fundamentally different. Heavy brow ridge, broad flat nose, eyes that showed intelligence, purpose. This wasn't a person in a costume. The physics were wrong. The muscle mass moving under that hair, the way the joints articulated, this was something else, something real. The creature planted himself between the charging bear and his family. Then he roared, not a human shout, not an animal growl. Something in between that I felt through the helicopter's vibration, even at 400 feet. I felt it in my bones. No human could produce that. This was real. The male swiped as the bear closed distance, massive arm moving with shocking speed, and made contact. But the grizzly's momentum carried it past, directly into one of the juveniles. The scream that followed wasn't human, high-pitched, pain-filled vocalizations that cut through the rotor noise. The juvenile went down, blood on the grass. The mother rushed in, the bear wheeling for another attack. My radio crackled. Rescue 7, what's your status? I should have said, grizzly attack in progress, standing by. That's protocol. Instead, I looked at that juvenile, maybe 5 feet tall, bleeding out, while his mother tried desperately to protect him from a bear that wouldn't stop. 30 years of following orders, and in that moment I realized, some things matter more than rules. "I'm landing," I said. "Negative, Rescue 7. You are not authorized to." I switched off the radio. This wasn't about protocols or career consequences. This was about a mother watching her child bleed out. Human or not, that meant something. I pushed forward, descending. No turning back now. At 200 feet, I got my first unobstructed view. The male, probably 700 pounds of muscle, had positioned himself between the bear and his family. I could see him favoring his right side. The mother crouched over the juvenile, who was thrashing weakly. Another small one hid behind her, eyes wide with terror. These weren't monsters. They were a family, protecting their young. I had a landing zone picked out flat ground about 150 yards from the family, close enough to respond, far enough to not seem threatening. The Grizzly had backed off 30 yards, still watching. The skids touched down, rotor decay. The sound of the wild returned. Wind through pines, the juvenile's cries, the male's low warning vocalizations. Through the windscreen, the male watched me. Direct eye contact across species. What I saw there wasn't animal awareness, it was recognition. He was deciding whether I was a threat or help. I opened the door and stepped out. First aid kit, an emergency medical bag in hand. 20 yards separated us. The October air was cold, thin at this elevation. I could smell them now earthy, like cedar and damp soil after rain. I moved slowly, hands visible, posture non-threatening. I spoke, not because they'd understand words, but because tone communicates intent. "I'm here to help. Your young one is hurt. I have medical supplies." The male tilted his head. Then he did something that stopped me cold. He looked at my hands, looked at the medical bag, looked back at the injured juvenile, and slowly stepped aside. Permission granted. My pulse hammered as I closed the distance. The juvenile's cries were weaker now. The mother's eyes tracked every movement. At 5 yards, I dropped to one knee. "I need to see the wound," I said softly. The mother looked at the male. Some communication passed between them. Then she gently pulled back. 3 parallel slashes across the juvenile's left shoulder and chest. Bear claws. Deep lacerations. Muscle damage visible. Blood matting the dark hair. My combat medic assessment kicked in. Significant blood loss. Possible shock, but treatable if I acted fast. I opened the kit, pulled out gauze and antiseptic. I poured antiseptic over the wounds. The juvenile flinched, cried out. Then I felt it, the mother's hand on my shoulder. Not pushing, just touching. Her hand was massive and could crush my collarbone effortlessly. But the touch was gentle, trembling. She was trusting me with her child. I looked up, met her eyes. "I've got him, I promise." I worked quickly, cleaning the wounds, applying antibiotic ointment, wrapping pressure bandages. The juvenile's vocalizations softened to whimpers. The mother's hand remained on my shoulder. As I secured the final bandage, the injured juvenile reached up and touched my face. Gentle, exploratory, the way a child touches something wondrous. Fingertips traced my beard, my nose, my eyebrows. "You're going to be fine, buddy," I whispered. Then the male extended his hand, not toward me, but toward the medical kit. He pointed at a roll of gauze, then at his own forearm. I saw lacerations there too. "You're hurt too. Here, let me." But he shook his head. Then he picked up the gauze himself and began wrapping his own wound. Clumsily at first, then with confidence, mimicking what he'd just watched me do. I sat back, stunned. Tool use. Observational learning. This wasn't just intelligence, this was cognition approaching human levels. In 5 minutes, he'd learned a medical procedure by watching once. The male finished wrapping his arm, then made a sound low, rumbling, rhythmic. The other family members responded. Language structure. The mother squeezed my shoulder gently, then touched her chest and gestured toward the injured juvenile. "Thank you." My throat tightened. "You're welcome." They understood gratitude. The male stood and made a gesture. Come, he wanted me to follow. The male started walking toward the northern tree line. The mother lifted the injured juvenile as if he weighed nothing. They were taking me somewhere. I grabbed my medical bag and followed. We moved through the forest, then with supernatural silence, me crashing through undergrowth, 400 yards upslope, through terrain too steep for casual hiking. Then he stopped at what looked like a solid rock face. He placed his hand on the stone, then pushed. A section swung inward, not rock, camouflage. Branches, moss and mud expertly arranged to mimic natural stone. Behind it, a cave entrance, maybe 8 feet high. The male entered. The mother followed. They paused inside, waiting. The message was clear. This is our home. We're trusting you with this. I stepped through. The cave wasn't deep, maybe 40 feet, but it was clearly lived in. A home, organized sections. Sleeping area with piled grass and cedar boughs. Food storage with dried meat hanging from wooden pegs. A water collection system, hollowed log sections catching drips from the cave ceiling. Tool use, planning, architecture. This was material culture, evidence of society, technology, tradition. They had civilization. The male gestured deeper. I pulled out my flashlight. The male watched with interest as I clicked it on. The beam revealed a narrow passage leading to a secondary chamber, a nursery. 3 more juveniles, younger than the injured one, huddled on soft bedding of moss and deer hide. One, older female, grey hair, stooped posture sat with them. The young ones made frightened sounds. The male made reassuring vocalizations. The elderly woman approached me slowly. She reached out, touched my face, my shoulders, my hands. Then she made a sound, and the juveniles calmed. He's safe. The elder female gestured at my medical bag, then at her own leg. She was limping. She lifted her leg, showing me an old injury, something broken that had healed wrong years ago. I knelt, examined it. I couldn't fix that without surgery, but I could help with the pain. I found ibuprofen. I showed her the pills, mimed swallowing, then pointed at her leg and shook my head. Pain, no more. She took the pills and dry swallowed them. Then she waited patiently. The injured juvenile was placed on the bedding with the others. The young ones crowded around him, touching his bandages, siblings checking on brothers. But something caught my attention. The bedding section was too large. I counted the depressions in the moss, 5 sleeping areas, but only 3 juveniles. 2 spaces empty. The elderly woman saw me notice. She made a sound soft, mournful, and gestured toward the empty spaces. Then she brought her hands together, slowly moved them apart. Separation, loss. 2 juveniles had been here. They weren't anymore. What happened? She limped to the cave wall and pointed at scratch marks, crude but deliberate. Tally marks. She pointed at the marks, then at the empty bedding, then toward the cave entrance. Then she made a sound somewhere between keening and warning. Others had come, taken. The juveniles were gone. The male approached me, placed his massive hand on my shoulder. Then he pointed outside. Outside, the male led me up another 100 yards to an overlook, a natural rock platform with a commanding view. I could see for miles the meadow where we'd first met, my helicopter sitting there like a toy, the hiking trails, and in the distance, the fire lookout tower. The male pointed at the tower, then at his eyes. We watch. He pointed at the trails, then at his eyes again. We watch everything. The male picked up a stick, scratched marks in the dirt. Lines, many lines, grouped together. Years, decades. They'd been watching humans for decades. Then he mimicked perfectly the posture of a hiker with a backpack. Then the sound, a rough approximation of human speech, not words but the rhythm and cadence of conversation. They'd been studying us, learning. He pointed at my helicopter in the distance, made a whirring sound with his throat. Helicopter rotors. He pointed at the sky, traced an arc, flight path. He knew my patrol route. The male's expression wasn't threatening. It was almost conspiratorial. We know you, but you never knew us. Until today. I checked my watch. 9:47. I'd been on the ground for 90 minutes. I needed to return. The male seemed to understand. I gestured toward the helicopter, then at myself. He nodded, but then he pointed at me, then at the sky, then made a repeated gesture. Come back. I nodded. The male stepped forward, placed his hand on my chest over my ticker, then on his own chest. A pact. I mirrored the gesture. I stood there for a moment, his hand still on my chest, feeling his heartbeat slower than mine, stronger, but fundamentally the same. A pulse, a life, a person. For 30 years, I'd flown over these mountains thinking we were alone in understanding what it meant to protect family. I'd been wrong. And standing on that overlook with the male's hand over my ticker, I realized everything I thought I knew about this territory, about intelligence, about what deserves protection, all of it was built on a lie. The government knew. They had to know. Why? If you're as stunned by this as I was, hit that subscribe button. Because what happened next proved the government has been lying about these creatures for decades. I hiked back to my helicopter. I reached Bell 206 at 10:15. Before climbing in, I looked toward the tree line one more time. Nothing visible, but I felt them watching. I climbed into the cockpit. My hand was trembling slightly on the cyclic. Everything crashed over me. The bear attack, the landing, the cave, the nursery, the empty sleeping spaces, those missing juveniles. The revelation that they'd been watching us for years, learning our patterns, our technology. My camera had recorded the first 20 minutes, but everything after only existed in my memory and the small backup camera in my jacket pocket. Personal device. They hadn't noticed it. I switched the radio back on. Rescue 7, respond immediately. I keyed the mic. Rescue 7 to base. I'm fine. Situation resolved. Returning now. Dave, you've been dark for 2 hours. 2 hours. It felt like 20 minutes. I'll explain when I land. The flight back took 35 minutes. How do you tell people that everything they've been told is wrong? That there's an intelligent species living in these mountains? That something had taken 2 of their young? As I approached the airfield, I saw them. 3 vehicles that hadn't been there when I'd left. 2 unmarked black SUVs and a Forest Service supervisor truck. They knew. How did they know already? I sat down on the tarmac at 10:52. Before rotor decay finished, 2 men in tactical gear approached. Behind them, my supervisor, Jim, looking grim, and a woman in a dark suit. No friendly waves, no relief. This was an interception. I stepped out. The woman approached. Mr. Mitchell, I'm Agent Sarah Thornton, Department of Interior. We need your camera system. Right now. I don't understand. The footage from Clearwater Basin. Your aircraft has GPS tracking. We know where you landed. We know how long you were on the ground. We know what you saw. She extended her hand. The camera. Now. This is a matter of national security. National security? Unless. They'd known all along. Agent Thornton stepped closer, lowered her voice. Once you walk into that conference room, your life changes forever. You can walk away now. File a report about a false alarm. I'll make the GPS data disappear. You can go home and forget this happened. I thought about the male's hand over my ticker, the mother's trembling touch, the empty sleeping spaces. I can't forget what I saw. They're real. They're intelligent. And if you're this desperate to silence me, that means I'm right about all of it. Something flickered in Thornton's eyes. Yes, she said quietly. You're right about all of it, and that's why you can never tell anyone. The conference room was sterile, windowless fluorescent lights humming, recycled air. I could still smell them on my clothes, cedar and earth and something ancient, like I'd brought a piece of their world into ours. I sat across from Agent Thornton and a second feed. Jim was there but silent. They'd already taken my helicopter camera system, took my phone, but the backup camera, still in my jacket pocket. Thornton opened a laptop. On screen, satellite footage of Clearwater Basin, time-stamped to this morning. My helicopter is on the ground, 4 figures near it, me moving between them. We've been monitoring this area for 8 years. We know what's there. What did you do after landing? 8 years? The government had known about this family for 8 years? Project Tahoma is a classified conservation program. Since 1967, we've been tracking and protecting populations across the Pacific Northwest. There are approximately 600 individuals left. They're critically endangered. She paused. What you did today, landing among them, interacting with them, you may have just disrupted years of careful preservation. Disrupted? I saved one of their young from bleeding out. The mother asked me to help. Thornton's expression shifted. She asked you? How? I described the gesture, the touch, the communication. Mr. Mitchell, in 57 years of observation, we've documented only 3 instances of deliberate communication. You're describing sustained interaction over nearly 2 hours. That's unprecedented. The second Fed spoke. Did they show you their habitation site? I hesitated. I thought of the male's hand over my ticker. I thought of those empty sleeping spaces. They showed me they have families, intelligence, culture, and you've been keeping that secret for 6 decades while treating them like endangered wildlife instead of people. I leaned forward. And something's been taking their young. 2 juveniles missing from one family. Do you know about that? Thornton and the second Fed exchanged glances. She opened a secure folder. This is Patterson Gimlin, 1967, the famous Bigfoot film from Bluff Creek, California. She clicked another video. Same location, different angle. Government surveillance footage. We were already there. We'd been tracking that individual for 6 months. When Patterson and Gimlin accidentally filmed her, we had a choice: discredit them and continue our work in secret, or acknowledge the species and watch them get hunted into extinction within a decade. We chose secrecy. She showed me more. Thermal satellite imagery from the 1,980 seconds. Declassified memos marked eyes only. Audio recordings of vocalizations. Maps of protected zones established under false pretenses. How many people know? Within the federal government? Maybe 200 across 6 agencies. Presidents are briefed in their first month. They all choose secrecy. Because the alternative is chaos. She closed the laptop. As for the missing juveniles, yes, we've documented disappearances. We don't know what's taking them. We can't investigate without causing panic. Thornton slid a document across the table. You violated restricted airspace, ignored direct orders, and made unauthorized contact. Technically, we should charge you. She paused. Practically? Sign this non-disclosure agreement, retire early with full pension, and never speak about this. Because if word gets out, those 600 individuals become 600 targets, and whatever's been taking their young, it'll get easier when hunters flood these mountains. I stared at the NDA, silence in exchange for their safety. I signed. What choice did I have? Drop a comment. Do you think the government has been covering this up all along? And what other mountain mysteries should I investigate next? 3 days later, I sat in my cabin, officially retired. The NDA was ironclad. My helicopter camera was gone forever. But the backup camera in my jacket, 24 minutes of footage from the cave, the nursery, the overlook, sat encrypted on my laptop. I'd watched it 30 times. Those beings weren't animals. They were people, sapient, cultural. Treating them as endangered species rather than a living culture felt fundamentally wrong. But what could one retired pilot do? If I release the footage, what happens? Best case, scientists get involved, resources mobilize. Worst case, the Clearwater family becomes ground zero for a circus. Their hidden valley was trampled. Protection through obscurity was real, but so was erasure. 600 individuals, all hidden, all denied existence, and something out there was taking their young. My phone rang. New phone, they'd given me a replacement. Unknown number, but something made me pick up. Hello? Silence. Not dead air. Breathing. heavy, rhythmic, not human. Hello? A sound came through the speaker, low, rumbling, the exact vocalization pattern from the cave. The male. But that was impossible. I'd left my old phone in the helicopter. They'd have seen it, examined it. But understanding it was a communication device, learning my number. If he had photographic memory, which their observational skills suggested he could have memorized the digits, then, at a trailhead or campsite, figured out how to dial. That level of technological comprehension was staggering. It's you. How did you... A different sound, higher pitched. From the background. The juvenile. They were calling to tell me he'd survived. Is he okay? Pause. Then, an affirmative vocalization, yes, safe, well. My throat tightened. They'd figured out human telecommunications. They'd called to say, "The child you saved is alive. Thank you. I'm glad. I'm so glad." Pause. Then a question. Safe? Are you safe? I'm okay, but I can't come back. They're watching. The sound that came next was mournful. Loss. Understanding. They knew I was exiled from their world, just as they were exiled from mine. I'm sorry. The line went silent. Then, one final sound. The gentle vocalization that meant gratitude, friendship, trust, goodbye. I sat staring at the encrypted footage on my laptop. Honor their trust by keeping the secret, or honor their humanity by revealing it? 2 weeks after retirement, knock on my door, 11 at night. Agent Thornton, alone, out of uniform, jeans and jacket. No Fed SUV, just a dusty pickup. She looked exhausted. Can I come in? This wasn't official. She sat at my kitchen table, dropped a file folder. Project Tahoma is failing. We're losing them faster than we can track. She opened the folder. Photos of empty cave entrances, abandoned habitation sites. 3 years ago, thermal scans estimated 847 individuals. 2 years ago, 712. Last year, 600. She slid another photo across. This month, we're tracking maybe 380. These are estimates based on heat signatures. We can't get close enough for true head counts. But the trend is clear. They're disappearing. And we don't know why. What's causing it? Thornton shook her head. Could be illness we can't get close enough for medical study. Could be habitat loss. Climate change is shrinking their range. Could be inbreeding 600 was already dangerously low genetic diversity. She hesitated. Or it could be despair. Animals don't experience hopelessness, but people do. These beings are watching their world shrink, their numbers dwindle, living in constant hiding. Maybe they're just giving up. The words hit like a gut punch. The hands-off approach isn't working. They need help, real help. But my superiors won't authorize it. Too risky, too expensive, too politically volatile. So they'll watch 380 become extinct and file it away as a classified conservation failure. She stood to leave, then turned back. I saw your interaction footage. Before it was classified, you didn't just make contact, you made them trust you. What are you asking me to do? Thornton met my eyes. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just telling you. They're dying, and you might be the only human they'd accept help from. She left. I sat with impossible weight. 3 days later, I noticed the truck. Black SUV, tinted windows, parked at the end of my property road. When I walked out, it drove away. When I returned, it was back. They weren't hiding. They wanted me to know I was being watched. But on the 4th night, at 2 in the morning, my phone rang. The male. But this time, the sound he made was different. Urgent. Desperate. In the background, coughing. Wet, labored coughing. The juvenile. The one I'd saved. He was sick. I can't help you, I said, voice breaking. They're watching me. The sound that came back was a question. Then what? I looked at my laptop. The encrypted footage. I'm going to do something. It's going to bring attention. Your valley might not be secret anymore, but maybe that's the only way to save you. Silence. Then, an affirmative vocalization. Do it. Sometimes the only way to protect someone is to expose the truth. 3 hours later, At 2:14 in the morning, I uploaded the footage. Share this with anyone who's ready to know the truth. Because what I did next changed everything. 24 minutes of cave interior, the nursery, the overlook, the male counting years of observation. Within 6 hours, 800,000 views. Within 24 hours, 12 million. The encryption watermark proved it hadn't been edited. The metadata showed date, time, GPS coordinates. Federal agents arrived at 9:47, arrested me for NDA violation. I spent 11 days in federal custody, but the footage was everywhere, downloaded, copied, analyzed by experts worldwide. You can't unring that bell. The government tried damage control, sophisticated hoax, but primatologists confirmed the anatomical details were beyond any technology. Biologists noted behaviors consistent with great ape intelligence. Anthropologists pointed out the tool use, cultural indicators, multi-generational family structure. The evidence was undeniable. Charges were dropped after 2 weeks. Too much public pressure. Project Tahoma was partially declassified. Yes, they exist. Yes, we've been tracking them. Yes, they're endangered. 3 months of congressional hearings. Result: $200 million in emergency conservation funding, formal endangered species protection, and establishment of protected reserves across Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. The Clearwater Families Valley became part of a 40,000-acre no-access zone. Did my exposure help? The next population count showed 390 individuals, up from 380. Not huge, but the decline stopped. Medical teams with minimal contact protocols provided remote monitoring. Several individuals accepted treatment. They're still wary, but they're not disappearing anymore. At least, not as fast. I still live in my cabin. Couldn't get my pilot job back, federal blacklist, but I write now. Consult for conservation groups, tell my story, and sometimes, late at night, my phone rings. Unknown number, heavy breathing. Low vocalizations I've learned to interpret. The male calls every few months. The juvenile is thriving. The elder female's leg pain is managed. The family is still there, still safe. They know what I did broke my promise to keep them secret, but they also know why, and in their language, the last sound the male makes before hanging up always means the same thing: gratitude, friendship, trust. They forgave me. Maybe that's all that matters. I sit on my porch now, looking toward Clearwater Basin. Somewhere in those trees, 390 individuals live hidden lives, not entirely secret anymore, but still mysterious. Still there. And as long as they're there, I haven't failed. Helicopters still fly patrol routes over those mountains, different pilots now. But I wonder, are they watching the creatures, or are the creatures watching them? In these mountains, the answer is probably both, and maybe that's how it should be. Two species sharing one territory, each keeping their distance, each aware the other exists. Not integration, but acknowledgement, respect. I don't think we'll ever be friends with them. That's not how this works. Different species, different worlds. But what I learned that October morning, you don't have to be friends with someone to respect their right to exist. For 30 years, I flew over their territory thinking it was empty. It was never empty. They were always there, watching us, avoiding us, trying to survive despite us. Maybe that's what first contact really means, not aliens landing on the White House lawn, but finally admitting we're not alone. We never were. And the things sharing this planet with us deserve better than our denial. 390 individuals left in these mountains, and I've only told you about one family. Subscribe if you want to follow me deeper into what the government doesn't want discussed, because this isn't the only secret these mountains are keeping. Drop a comment with your theories. What do you think is taking their young? Hit that like button if you're ready for the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it gets. This is Dave Mitchell, and I'm still out here, still watching, and somewhere in those trees, they're watching back.